Reverend Ed McClain is a leader in our community. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with him one-on-one. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Well, Reverend McClain, it is so good to see you.
It's my pleasure to see you, my friend.
Yes, sir.
It's been a while.
It has been.
Yes, indeed.
And I know that you are a huge fan of Quintin's Close-Ups, so I thank you for your support.
Well, thank you, sir. You've done an awesome job in our community, and we appreciate it.
Oh, anytime.
In more ways than one. I find my time now looking to see what you got and who you got about.
And today it's you.
Today it's me. Today it's me.
And here we sit in your beloved Calvary A&E Church, right here on Groveland Avenue, North Charleston. When you think of Calvary A&E Church, how do you define it?
I think of the people here as being some of the finest people that you would want to find in the world. I was blessed to have been with them for 33 years. So with that, and with the people of Union Heights,
Right.
you won't find finer people anywhere.
You talk about Union Heights. What is the state of Union Heights right now in your mind?
I think it's still evolving, still growing. It hasn't reached a point that I feel it's going to get to, but I see it with the continuing evolvement, moving on. I think we're going to see things in Union Heights where the church will become locked into the future of where we're going. And that has been a starting point before, but now it's continuing to do that.
Let me reset, because obviously there's so much going on in the world right now. You had the recent shooting in Las Vegas on Monday. Obviously you have issues with the Charleston County School Board here. And as you mentioned, there's Union Heights here in North Charleston is evolving, so the city's evolving. What sermon would you write when you think of what's going on in the world right now?
I like that. God is doing what He said He would do. Everything has a beginning. Everything starts from some place and move to another. And when we read scriptures, it basically tells us that even as we look in days gone by, that the heart of man was included in every evil that there was in the world. But then when the world was destroyed and Noah and his wife and sons and daughters evolved from that, the world was repopulated through the three sons of Noah. So when I look and I can see that, and I can hear when God said that the world will not be destroyed again by water, but by fire next time.
Right.
Lets me know that there's going to be another time, and that we would get to a point where things would not get better, it gets worse. And when I see our world today, it's in a worse state now than it was then. And I think it's going to get even worse. Yeah.
Well, you know, they were just talking to you about your radio show. And, you know, obviously that's an impact for a lot of people here in this community. When did that radio bug bite you?
I got here in 1974 from Washington, D.C. We left. We spent 18 years in Washington, and I left here and went there. And I returned back here in 1974. And in 74, I got involved in the school system as a whole. I also got involved in radio around 1976, I think it was. And I stayed in radio for basically 38 years. Every morning I would blast the air 5 o'clock in the morning and spend time with the people in our area. Got to know so many of them. because of the early morning time that we had there, developed some of my greatest friends and followers via the route of radio.
How has radio changed you?
It changed me, I think, somewhat because one comes with prefixed attitudes and feeling that it ought to be this way or why is it. And then you find that people are people. And the good thing about this is when you find that people are people, that also lets you know basically that, hey, you too, much like many of these who you serve in the morning, and then you get to really know them for who they are.
Right.
They get to know you for who you are, and you find that you have opened up a keg of worms that's really beautiful, because you find that people are beautiful, people are good, people are great.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, you find some that are chip off an old block that basically are problem creators. But for the most part, I find that people are good. People have a desire to want to do that which is right. And if you work with them, you get what you give.
Yeah. You talk about Washington, D.C., and when we were outside just a few minutes ago, you talked to me about your time, obviously, at Allen University, and even before then, your beloved Arlington. Talk to me about the Reverend Ed McClain going up there.
Well, you know, I was blessed, more blessed than anything else, Quintin. I graduated from Lincoln High School in McClainville.
That's right.
And for me, that was an awesomely great and wonderful time. I enjoyed my classmates. We graduated with a large class. I think we had about 36, 37 classmates. So the class was very small.
Right.
But I left Lincoln and went to Allen University in Columbia.
That's right.
Spent time there with them, and left Allen and went to Washington, D.C. When I got in D.C., I had the opportunity there of graduating with my master's degree from George Washington University.
Right.
And it was one awesomely wonderful time. I played football there. I coached at the DC Teachers College. I went into the field of teaching for a number of years and served there for about 7 years in the teaching field. And I left the teaching field and went into the assistant principalship. We did some pretty great and wonderful things for kids who, at that particular time in that place, seemingly was not picking up what they needed to pick up from an educational perspective. We utilized time, skill, and energy with several teachers from the field to create an oven for these kids. And these kids, over a period of 2 years, 3 years, came out of school doing as well, if not better, than kids who had been doing very well in school. So we found out that education itself needed to have, first of all, people who cared. People who cared for children, and children needed to know that themselves, that my teacher loves me, my teacher cares about me. And when that happened, then you found a new child. That basically is what I found out in Washington, D.C. We stayed in D.C. for 17, 18 years. And then I felt the call for coming back to Charleston, or coming back home.
Yeah.
We got back home here, and we stayed in Charleston, and that's where we've been ever since. Spent 4 or 5 years at Wallace Middle School
Right.
as the vice principal there, and went to Frierson Elementary School as a principal there for 4 years, and left Frierson and came here to Norman C2 Middle School as the principal there for the new middle school that we opened.
So when you think of what's going on about potentially Garrett Academy and their future, what sticks out in your mind? Excuse me.
I very personally feel that it's an opportunity for the system to grasp an area and to grasp young people and do magnificent and magnanimous things with them in the utilization of the area in which they live. When I see the movement of schools and places of education to areas where people are already pretty well set, or where the educational process has already been set in, I think we're doing a disservice to kids and to people who live in those communities. I see Garrett as being a great and an awesome place for the creation of what the city is trying to do in terms of its new programs there. I see Garrett as being a place where you could lock it in and make it an area where kids could say, I attend this school over in the Garrett area, and make the Garrett area a place of confirmation to the educational excellence. When I see us skirting those areas at all times and putting the educational buildings and the educational institutions in other areas, I think we do a disservice to kids who live in those areas.
Let me go back to, obviously, what you said earlier, from your time as an educator to now, and you came here really right after that. My question is this, when you were talking to me, was this: what got you from education to really serving God?
Well, one of the things, and believe you me, the ministry was not my choice. Let me just say that right up front. And we understand, and it's nothing new.
Okay.
For us to assume that every pastor that's in ministry basically has gone out there because that's where they wanted to go.
Okay.
I assume, my brother, that many who are there because of the call of God to ministry. Not because they wanted to go, not at all. And there was a fellow even in the Bible talked about Jeremiah, and how Jeremiah was called by God, and how when he was said, he found every excuse for not wanting to go into ministry. And God basically told him, before you were born, I knew you. You know, it was me to place you in your mother's womb. I placed you for such a time as this, you see. So go out. I want you to tell my people what they must do. And don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of the look on their faces. But you follow what I want for you to do. And Jeremiah went out, and of course, with situations like that, you find difficulties on almost every hand. But the need to tell what thus said the Lord is always there. So we take that and we follow through to do what we got to do. And for me, that has been the call to ministry. I ran. Yeah, I took off and I went running. Ministry was not something that I felt that I needed to be with and be involved with. And when God placed it in my heart and in my mindset, I knew it was something that I needed to do. And that's where I went to. I've not been perfect in every situation, even in settings and situations like that. We find ourselves still in the clutches of where we are and what we do. But we understand and we realize that the work is not ours, but the work is all divine.
When did you become comfortable with God's calling you, really God calling you to become a minister?
I became comfortable when I got the call from him to ministry. And I resorted to the fact that if this is where you want me, then this is where I am. At that time, I attended Union AME Church in Allendale,
Right.
South Carolina. That's my home church.
Right.
And I eventually went back there after I completed my tour of ministry in the AME Church. I did 33 years right here at Calvary.
Right.
And then when I retired from here, I went to Union AME Church. And that's where I received a call from. That's where I received a call from. I worked with young people there. We had a youth choir in the church there that we established and founded. We had a youth choir east of the Cooper that included churches from one end of Mount Pleasant to Santee. Had an awesome time and choir there. So I technically have enjoyed the ministry. I've enjoyed the work that God has given me as a pastor, the work that he has given me as an educator in these schools, the work that he's given me on radio.
Was education a part of your ministry?
Oh, yes. Once you've gotten into education, it becomes a part of everything that you do. When I was on the radio station, education was a part of that because there are things that I did that was a part of the educational process itself. When I became a pastor, that's one of the things that we did. We worked with kids. We utilized the kids. We had a program of education in the senior center that we built around the corner there. And we had people in the church who worked with children. In the afternoon, we had a study program here for them. So the church has got to be involved if we want to see education move to that particular area that it needs to. We've got to be involved, and the church must. I don't see the church today as being as involved as we need to. But I do think we're going to see a change in that. Yeah. I serve as the chairman of the Interdenominational Ministers Alliance. Yeah. And we take the opportunity to meet with so many different factions of our city. The government, there's a section of it. We had our meeting with Boeing, and the first African American individual that they brought in as CEO to work with that, John Robinson. Yeah. We had the opportunity to deal with Anton Gunn,
Right.
who's at the NUSC. We had the opportunity to deal also with Tony Flowers, who's at the Ropa Hospital, serving in that same area. And it gives us the opportunity as an outside group peeking in on education as well as peeking in on our community with an eye there to ascertain the fact that our children receive the benefits of what we as a community are doing, because we become, or we are what they will become tomorrow. And if we do not give them everything that they need today, something will be missing tomorrow that will create tremendous difficulties in the lives of our children. So, with that being said, I've had the opportunity of working with Mayor Teckenberg,
Right.
Keith Sonny,
Right.
and the likes. The city of North Charleston, we worked well together with them. Charleston County, we worked very well with them. We do a good job of working with entities like that. So IMA plays this great part with us, as well as every other area that I've worked with. As I said, my prayer now is that we can get the pastors to step on in and take up and do what we ought to. We've got some of them that are doing great, awesome work, but we've got many of them who we need to get on board to do what we need to do to make our community what it ought to be.
I gotta look out into the sanctuary here. You pastored here for 33 years. If you were to go back and look in your mind, what is that best sermon in your mind?
That's a good question. And I say that, I really say that because after 33 years, there are just so many of them. You know, there are just so many of them. One of the sermons that I suppose I think about more than enough is when Jesus went out on the Sea of Galilee, and he had, first of all, he had had much time in talking with his fellow brothers, and he was tired. So after being tired from doing that task, he got his disciples to get in a boat with him, and they went out into the sea.
Right.
And as they got out into the sea, things began to happen. The waves began to lash against the side of the boat. The wind began to blow because that was the creation of the wind.
Right.
I mean, the creation of the waves. But anyway, when all of these things happened, Jesus went into the back of the boat and lay down to get some much needed rest. And I remember this because we've got to remember that we always need him.
Sure.
There's never a time in our lives that we do not need Jesus in our lives. But his disciples, basically, when the wind and the waves and when the weather struck up, felt that they had it all taken care of. And we do that sometimes. We do not feel a need for him at all. We feel that we can take care of this thing ourselves. And when they did this, they did everything that they felt they could do, they did. But it did not stop the waves from lashing against the boat. It did not stop the wind from, in a sense, blowing. And finally, one of them said, hey, let's wake up Jesus. He's asleep. And when they woke him up, he woke up basically and looked at them and asked them, where's your faith? You know,
Yes.
where is your faith? I look at things like that, and for me that was a favorite of mine, because there are times in my life when I realize that trials are going to come.
Sure.
When I realize that we are going to have ups and downs like we've never had them before. But am I alone because we have these ups and downs? And I realize my answer is no, he's always with me.
Amen. Indeed.
All I've got to do is just to take it.
Right.
And when I do that, my problems are basically solved. Because the answer to our problems are in us.
Yes.
They are in us.
And you got to walk by faith, not by sight.
Ooh. My goodness, my
Yes.
goodness.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Well, Reverend McClain, Ed McClain, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
Well, thank you. You've got to promise one thing.
Yes, sir.
When I get my next church,
You will.
and the way you're looking at
You will.
it's still I'm going to do that.
You will.
No. I'm going to ask you, though, of course, when you get some time, because we're working with a group of young people at Union AME Church. Whether you would be able to come down, maybe just talk with some of them, as you're doing with me.
Sure.
We have our pastor there, Pastor Dennis. He's doing an awesome job and working with the kids.
Okay.
Jerry Brown is working with him, along with Kimberly Smythe and William Alston.
Oh, yes.
The Honorable Reverend William Alston, who, like me, we retired. But we get the opportunity to at least work with them.
Yes.
Deborah Armstead. So if you might be able to come down with them sometime,
Sure.
and just sit and chat with them.
Sure, I can do that. That's a deal.
Oh, man, that's a deal.
That's a deal.
I'll take it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate this.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.